You're listening to the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. Now here's your hosts, Kevin, Derek, and Alex.
All right, and welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. And it's the three amigos. We are back. Kevin, Alex, and myself. I am, I'm joined by all the co-hosts tonight. Gentlemen, how we doing?
Doing good, man. Doing good. Glad to be spending a Tuesday night here with the whole gang, right, Alex? And sounds like we're going to be seeing more of you here, aren't we?
Yeah, we're hoping so. The schedule, it only took all of football season for me to get my work schedule figured out. So, better late than never, right? Right into the playoffs when fantasy season is done for the most part, right? We still got some DFS that we can talk about over the coming weeks. Finally the work schedule has worked itself out to allow me to rejoin the three amigos here.
Well, good. I'm glad to see you. We're glad to have you back.
I'm happy to be back here, and hopefully we can keep entertaining everybody.
Absolutely. So, guys, we got a great show tonight. We're gonna be going through some award winners. We got some wild card weekend to recap. We got some divisional round coming up, and we got a fun little debate scheduled here at the end, as well as we're going to actually get into some of our Super Bowl calls here, all of which should be a lot of fun. And you can find us on all the socials: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, at Good Old Boys FF. Again, best place to support this independent podcast. Head over to YouTube, click that subscribe button, ring the bell, get those noties when we go live. We got lots of great content scheduled for you this coming off season. But guys, let's go ahead and just jump right on in to Wild Card Weekend. And was last night the final game for the GOAT? Is that the last time we see Tom Brady?
Negative. We
don't
will
think
see
so
Tom Brady again.
Yeah, I think he can't allow it to end like that, right? Like, I remember on this very show back when I was still a part of it, that I called for Tom Brady to be the league MVP this year because I thought he was going to go on his giant, FU tour to the league. He did not, and it turns out that football is a team sport, and not one guy makes a great team. So I think that he can't end it that way, although the end of his press conference was very cordial to the press and the media that was there. And it kind of felt like somebody saying, hey, thanks, and see ya, maybe never. But I do think Tom's back for one more go around. I think he's got to make it right.
All that came across to me was thanks, but I'm not going to be with you guys anymore. You can catch me as a visiting press tour, maybe. Like that's how that one struck me when he was doing that one, that we'll see him in a different uniform yet again, I think.
And there's certainly some teams out there that would take his services. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Certainly not our team because we're married to our quarterback for the next however long. But
I have a sneaking suspicion that he could end up inside of our division.
That's fair. I actually think that there's a team in a pretty good market, pretty favorable to people market that is in need of a quarterback right now. That has somebody he's pretty darn familiar with as the head coach. That would be something.
Yeah, that only has an elite wide receiver, an elite tight end, a running back that led the league in rushing. No
running
biggies on that
contract year, by the way.
Yes, he was. And they're going to have to pay him to keep him, and they're going to have to fix a lot of defense in order to try and get that one going. So I don't know that he necessarily brings it back that route again, just from the standpoint if he's looking to put another ship on the old mantle there. That might be a tough road with all the things they've got to do, from players they got to pay to retain and improve on a defensive front there as well.
But
that could be tough.
Very plausible. It's very plausible that he ends up in Las Vegas. I mean, of the destinations, Las Vegas seems like the easiest one to see right now, right?
Mm-hmm. And it was kind of crazy too, right? So looking through all of the deals there, right? Tom Brady and the Bucs, a little bit of a letdown there. There's a lot of rumors floating out there that Brian Leftwich may no longer be the offensive coordinator down there. There was a lot of early morning rumors going around on that one. So we'll see how that one fully shakes out there. You also got some crazy comebacks and some crazy endings on that one as well. Like Dak played like a player possessed yesterday. The Ravens and the Bengals took a 98-yard touchdown return from a D lineman to get that job done.
I gotta tell you guys a quick story about that. I needed to take my dog outside. She needed to go, and I was trying to wait for Baltimore to punch that one in to see everything. And I was like, okay, before I take my dog out, I'm gonna use the facilities myself. So they were in a timeout, right? Because it was like a 4th down or something. It was like 4th and goal or whatever. So they take the timeout. I go use the bathroom. I come back and I see that Cincinnati has scored a touchdown. I'm like, what just happened?
Most televisions allow you to pause live TV, so you don't have to miss that action.
I am old school, and I'm already on a delay as it is because I'm streaming it, so I don't need to have more of a delay. That was wild. I caught the replay. It was crazy. But that was certainly wild. And you can't help but think that, the inexperience of Tyler Huntley kind of led to that, or you need to have a little more moxie to understand you got to be low instead of jumping over the top like that from that far away.
Or arms like Trevor Lawrence.
Right. But even Lawrence was closer.
Yeah. That's true. Or here's an idea. You have a couple of really good running backs.
Yeah, really good.
That can seemingly pick up a yard at will. I don't know. Maybe you hand the ball to one of those two guys in Gus Edwards or J.K. Dobbins.
Yeah.
Just saying. I mean, holy moly. But the Bengals
Dobbins didn't have a bad game. I don't understand why they didn't give him the ball more, because he was gashed in Cincinnati.
Mm-hmm.
And especially with the fact that Cincinnati, I mean, here's the issue that you see with Cincinnati, and I haven't looked at any injury reports, but man, their O-line again, it was just, patchwork by the middle of that game. By the end of the game, when you would really need something, that O-line was not the line that they started the game with. So that's a little bit of a concern moving forward if that right side of the line is not their preferred lineup. And just like we saw last year, if there's a team that can overcome poor O-line play, if there's a quarterback that can, it's Joe Burrow, because we saw that, in the playoff run last year where he did not have an offensive line. I mean, you might as well have thrown us out there. It would have been just as effective. But
listen, I don't even know that I'm going to give him a quarter of a second at that point.
But realistically, that's not much more than he had last year. So if there is a quarterback, but I tell you what, like, the way that team needs to go, they have to give Burrow a little bit more time. And so if that line's not good to go, that's problematic moving forward.
And actually, have you seen these defensive linemen? Like, there's a good chance that I just become a projectile missile flying at the quarterback there with some of these D linemen and D ends. Like, they're just picking me up and throwing me.
Which realistically does buy some more time, right? Because they're going to have to get, like, they at least have to step over you, right? That's going to give you a little bit more time.
I'm not even talking that they're just going to push me down and go through it. They're probably going to literally grab me, pick me up, and go, boom! And, good luck, quarterback, trying to dodge a Derek missile there.
Flying funny at that you say that. When I was in Houston for the Texans game, field level, that was the first time that I had seen Myles Garrett, like, in person and, like, up close. And it's unfair that people are made that large. Like, he's so big and so strong, and, like, man, how he gets blocked on any play is like a miracle in itself. O-linemen, I know that they're the unsung heroes, and you always hear coaches say, like, this game's going to be won in the trenches. Whoever can control the line of scrimmage, like all those cliches that you hear, but. I mean, just to even get in the way of that guy on a handful of plays, how he does not have 300 sacks, just how he's built, right? Like, and he's one of many in the NFL that are built like that are fast and strong and huge. And, it's just like, man, the fact that there aren't, 300 sacks a game or 60 sacks for 60 snaps is a miracle.
Right. And yes, absolutely. And then we had a little treat on Saturday with a massive comeback or implosion. I'm not sure which one is more accurate. The comeback or the implosion, but maybe it was a mixture of both. Maybe we had I'm not going to finish my my mixture of that because I just played it out in my head right before I said it. So
you probably should not.
We're
that's gonna be that's a little. We're gonna have to put the explicit mark on that.
Complosion.
Yeah, the complosion that happened there. Yeah, because the reverse of that, the impole back is not any better either. So
no.
Yeah. Anyway, so moving on there, like you had Trevor Lawrence come out, and I sent you guys a text at the halftime of that game, going, man, like Jacksonville looks like a team that should be picking first overall again, not a team that won the division. And sure enough, they came out and just ran it back in the second half. And yeah, it's interesting, right? The Chargers came out today and fired Joe Lombardi, the offensive coordinator, and their quarterback coach Day as well. And both of those guys getting the axe. And it's one of those that I get it. The Chargers offense doesn't necessarily, excite right now, and they're probably not utilizing all of their weapons and assets the best they could, right? But at the same time, too, you have a defensive-minded head coach that was brought in for a unit that the Chargers have always been that team that's always, if they can just get healthy, that defense should be really good. The offense is a lot to blame on that, but as a defense, how do you let a guy that you just turned the ball over and you had, made him look silly throughout the entire first half to turn around and look, all pro in the second half, and you have no answers for him? Like, that was a complete failure on both sides of the ball for the Chargers there.
Yeah. Like it, I don't know that I've ever quite seen anything like that.
We haven't seen anything like that.
I mean, and I'm even trying to think like collegiately, like, because I watch a ton of college football, as you guys know. Like, it's not just the NFL game that I watch. I consume as much as I can.
Right.
And I can't even think of a game in college where a team gave up a 27-point lead a minute and 30 seconds before halftime and lost the game. Like, unbelievable. Like, just absolutely unbelievable. So I guess kudos to Doug Peterson for making the adjustments, right? Like,
right.
Kudos to him, because they did make the adjustments and he did get Trevor Lawrence to settle down. But yes, they fired Joe Lombardi. I'd be wanting Brandon Staley's head on a pike if I'm a Chargers fan, right? Like, you are the one who played Mike Williams. You are the one who didn't challenge your coordinators to do something different offensively and defensively. Like, you are the one who's running this team. Therefore, you are a key component as to why you blew a 27-point lead to a team that talent-wise should not have matched up, right? They're playing inspired. They're now out kicking their coverage, right? Like, it's a young team. They don't know what they don't know. And we see this from time to time, right? Where they don't know that they should be nervous. They don't know that they shouldn't be winning this game, like, right? And they just come out and they put a performance together, albeit it was only for 30 minutes. But I guess in this game, 30 minutes, really 31 minutes, that last minute, right? Yeah. 31 minutes outplayed the Chargers 29 minutes. And that's really what it was, down to almost the second, right? Because the field goal was kicked with, basically no time left. So unbelievable. Kudos to the Jaguars for sticking with it, because Trevor Lawrence could have easily just dropped his head and go, you know what, guys, this one's on me. It wasn't my day. I cost us, like, here we go. And he didn't. He never dropped his head. Like, the kid just kept pressing. Lawrence, this is the Trevor Lawrence, right? The second half Trevor Lawrence is the guy that we expected coming right out of college to kind of set the world on fire a little bit and be that next great quarterback. And it didn't happen under Urban Meyer. It didn't really happen the first half of the season, but we have seen more and more flashes of it the back half of the regular season and the second half of this playoff game on Saturday. So kudos to them. I would have lost everything if you would have told me the Jags are coming back to win this game. Yeah, right.
Yeah, I don't think you would be alone on that.
Like, I would have lost everything. So it definitely entertaining, right? Like, a lot of people turn that game off at halftime, and if you weren't paying attention to the ticker or looking at your phone or whatever, you missed a really great fourth quarter. Like, I mean, the third quarter, you're like, okay, whatever. But once the fourth quarter hit and they kept chipping away at it, like, it was really entertaining football. So, I really am at a loss for words on the performance from the Chargers through that game.
Right.
Now, all that being said, as a Broncos fan, I have to find some way to, put the Broncos into every single show that we do. How do you feel as a Broncos fan knowing that you had a hand in eliminating two teams from the playoffs and you weren't even close to sniffing to get in? Because Lamar Jackson's PCL injury came against the Broncos.
Right.
And the Ravens lost by that touchdown. And Mike Williams was playing in week 18 against the Broncos and unfortunately suffered a cracked vertebrae in his back. Now, maybe Mike Williams makes all the difference in the world. Maybe not. I think Lamar Jackson might have made that difference, though, on Sunday night. But I'm going to take it either way, that the Broncos single-handedly eliminated two teams in one weekend and didn't even come close to the playoffs.
There you go. And to that point, Mike Williams in there probably makes, 7 of those 13 targets that Keenan Allen got somewhat catchable, because he finished with 6 receptions, but there was a whole lot of targets through that second half that weren't even, remotely catchable for him that were going as targets. So, Justin Herbert. Here's an interesting thought for you, right? So I heard after the Vikings game was done, I heard a whole lot of people, again, ragging on Kirk Cousins, talking about how, Kirk just couldn't get the job done, comes up short, yada, yada, yada. I did not hear that much talked about with Justin Herbert. And realistically, they played a very close statistical game between the two of them. Kirk Cousins actually had another touchdown than Justin Herbert did. Both of them, their defenses absolutely didn't bother to show up. So that was just kind of one of those that was very interesting to me, seeing some of the narratives come out, is that all Kirk Cousins blows up again, and nobody's saying Justin Herbert blew up on this one, giving up a 27-0 lead.
Yeah, Herbert's getting a pass, right? It's his first playoff game. Like, he was deemed, the heir apparent. I shouldn't say heir apparent. He took the league by storm his rookie year. Like, since then, it hasn't quite been as successful. Still talented and still good nonetheless. But, for Cousins, I think part of it's the length of career, right? Like, we've seen Cousins in these moments multiple times. We saw it with Cousins multiple times this season, right? The primetime game against Philly in week three, right? Where they got absolutely smashed. The game against the Cowboys where they got absolutely smashed. It took a improbable comeback, and this might be the closest thing to it, was the Vikings coming back to beat the Colts earlier this season.
Mm-hmm. The Colts.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. But
right.
That type of thing, right? Where they got down, they getting their freaking doors blown off there in the first quarter and a half, and then they just kind of kept chipping away. So I think Herbert does get the pass because it's his first playoff game, right? It's his first, it was Brandon Staley's first playoff game. Still don't know if that's quite the pass, but I think that is some of the difference, right? Where Cousins is getting lit up a bit more. Part of the reason he didn't find Justin Jefferson enough, right? Like, you have to scheme Justin Jefferson open. You have to do that. Yes, they're going to bracket him. Yes, they're going to double cover him. Guess what you do? You move him into the slot, and you get creative with motions and formations to free Justin Jefferson up and quit just using him as a deep ball threat. Yes, he made that one-handed 29-yard grab on fourth down I believe it was against the Giants, right, in the regular season that set up. Was it that one?
I believe so. That was incredible.
Yeah,
it was an incredible
catch, right? But it's like they kept going back to that well. I'm like, no, scheme him open, switch, make Osborne go to the outside, make Thielen do something besides run 5 yards and out, or 5 or 6 yard hook or something like. You have 2 serviceable tight ends. Where was T.J. Hawkinson and Irv Smith Jr. right in the second half of that game? Like, you have all these weapons. We know you suck defensively. You've been bad defensively all year long. You've had to outscore teams. So don't get conservative to your star player in the most important game of your season. And unfortunately, that's what the Vikings did.
Yeah.
With the exception of Brian Daboll, right? What we saw was that experience as a head coach in the playoffs mattered this year, right? It mattered. Experience in the playoffs helped. We had, Kyle Shanahan with the Niners, experienced in the playoffs. Granted, he was going up against Pete Carroll, Super Bowl winner, but, that was experience on experience. Experience matters. Doug Peterson won a Super Bowl. His team comes back and beats the Chargers. Experienced guy in the playoffs, knows what it's about. Dable and the Vikings, and excuse me, I can't remember the Vikings head coach name.
O'Connell.
Thank you, O'Connell. I'll just keep remembering Mike Zimmer for no reason. But, Dable's a rookie head coach going up against O'Connell, a first-year head coach too. And so, somebody was going to have to win that game. And Dable got creative. And what did they do? They ran their quarterback wild, right? Like Daniel Jones was running wild. And I can guarantee you.
And he still had 300 yards passing.
Yeah. And I can guarantee you Minnesota was like, we did not prep for Daniel Jones to leave the pocket. We thought Saquon. Everything was going to funnel through Saquon. Oh, no. Saquon was as much of a decoy as he was running the football. And so they did something different, right? They did not stick to their tendencies. In that game, Alexander Madison had no touches. Like they didn't, you got to get creative. It's the playoffs. You cannot be what you were. You need to be what you were in terms of mindset and mentality, but in terms of play calling, you can't be what you are. There's 18 weeks of film of you, 17 games of film of you. So you cannot be what you were. And trust me, when you don't think that these teams are going back and looking at every single detail that week leading up to it, they're going to try and find what the good teams do. And so, Mike McCarthy beats the Buccaneers. Now that's experience. Experience matters as a head coach. So
that was Todd Bowles' first playoff game as a head coach as well.
Right. So you're looking at, experience won out.
Yeah. Sean McDermott beat Mike McDaniels, who was also in his first game.
Right. So experience wins out is what I'm saying there. And maybe we're seeing Staley get the experience, right? Maybe that's what we're seeing. I think the reason why, to get back to your original point, Derek, the reason why Justin Herbert is getting a pass is because it's not a pattern yet. I think with Kirk Cousins, it's starting to become a pattern, if it's not already a pattern, right? And so you give a guy a pass for a one-off, right? A one-off, everybody has a bad game or has a bad half.
Right.
But when it matters, we have seen time and time again that when it matters, when it should matter, primetime games or night game, whatever it is with Kirk Cousins, he doesn't get it done.
Fair enough. Any other thoughts from Wild Card Weekend? Are we ready to move on?
Could Alex? I'm just going to ask this question, and it's almost, the satire. But could you hear the cuss words just flying all the way around you every time Brett Maher missed an extra point?
So,
what was your brethren down in Texas?
I will say,
absolutely beside themselves.
I'm closer to Houston than I am to Dallas.
It doesn't matter.
So
Houston's the redheaded stepchild down there, and you know it.
That you're not wrong. You're not wrong there. But they checked out of football season back in week 4. So I think that was something. Like I guess props to Mike McCarthy for still trying to kick PATs. I mean, I don't think he does if that game's close, right? Like, I don't think he's kicking PATs if it's a, 1 or 2 possession game.
I'd have gone for 2 after the second miss.
Yeah.
And then after the third miss, I would have had him go to the locker room. And then after the fourth miss, I would have asked him not to come back.
Yeah. I mean, honestly,
and it would have been that easy for me.
I would have started asking the punter, like, all right, we'll find, Dak can probably hold. Let's get the punter out there to see if,
Right.
they all look. If you don't think
Cooper
that
Rush can hold, that's what part of the backup quarterback's job is. Guess what you get to do? You work with special teams, and you're the emergency holder. Guess what you're doing? You're holding the damn kicks.
You're going to hold for the punter.
There you go.
I love the fact when they showed Dak, he's yelling and screaming, "Go for 2" on that one. On the Manning cash, you had Peyton talking about why are they still kicking?
Why are we kicking?
So
Peyton was beside himself, and we all know how Peyton feels about his kickers, Mike Vanderjagt.
Right.
Anyway,
sorry, I just had to ask that since that was in your backyard.
No, it's very funny.
All righty, guys. So we've got the fantasy football awards that have creeped upon us here, and not really creeped upon us because we blew it up all over every one of our socials here, and bringing those things out and had you guys vote on them. So let's go ahead and run through these things and let everybody know who the actual winners of these guys were. Out of the MVP voting for fantasy football, the candidates were Mahomes, Eckler, Jefferson, and Kelsey. And your winner is obviously Patrick Mahomes. Guys, any ideas on you want to take a guess as to what the winning percentage was of votes there?
33%.
You're close. Alex, you got a thought?
Much. I did see the Twitter poll close, but I can't remember for the life of me what it was.
It was 35%, and the close second, actually second was still a ways away. Austin Eckler, 25%, and Justin Jefferson with 24% there. So Patrick Mahomes, your fantasy football MVP from the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast there. All right, let's go ahead.
We don't see more love for Travis Kelce on that.
Right? In a distant fourth down the road there. All right,
the reason, though, is because the guy throwing him the ball is the one who's getting those points.
but just where you get your positional advantage, right?
Sure,
Derek and I were talking about this last week. He finished over 100 points better than the second place tight end on the season.
Right.
And if he would have been a wide receiver, that same point total, what'd you say, Derek, would have been good for
top 5? Like a top 5 wide receiver?
Something like that is crazy good value and advantage out of that position. And I'm telling everyone right now, my strategy for drafting, I came off the wait on tight end thing this past year. I was willing to step out of that. It bit me in the ass. I'm not doing it anymore. It is either Travis Kelce or I'm waiting until the 12th round. Yeah, I'm waiting until the 12th round. It is Travis Kelce or I am waiting. That is it. No Mark Andrews, no Kyle Pitts, no TJ Hawkinson, no Evan Ingram, no Hayden Hurst. It doesn't matter. It is it is Travis Kelce or the field in the 12th, 13th, 14th round. That is it.
Love it. All righty, let's go ahead and head on over to the draft darling. So the guy you drafted with late capital that turned out to exceeded his draft capital there. Candidates were Ramondre Stevenson, Austin Eckler, Jamal Williams, Jared Goff. The winner is, you guessed it, Jamal Williams. Fancy a guess as to the percentage?
42.
Really close. Kevin's close on these. Alex, any thoughts there?
No, I'll stick with $1, Bob.
$1, Bob. Okay. Well, it was Jamal Williams, 43%. And I know, Kevin, that was, makes you happy. That was your nominee for that one there. So running away with it.
And my nominee was Eckler, right? And Eckler was great, right? My reasoning behind it, and I hope you guys articulated that when we did this,
we did.
Was that, he was drafted high and he delivered. And that, how rare that is. That you actually got your money's worth out of a running back, and it wasn't just a crapshoot. Especially when we go and talk about the guy who wins the next one.
Absolutely. And the next one, we actually had the closest race of all of our awards here, but this was the buster, right? The guy that came up way short. You had Jonathan Taylor, DeAndre Swift, Cam Akers, Kyle Pitts. And funny enough, DeAndre Swift, Cam Akers certainly disappointing during the regular season and then turned it around a little bit for the fantasy playoffs there. But your winner for the buster is, that's right, Jonathan Taylor. Anybody want to venture a guess as to the percentage?
27.
Yeah, I'm gonna say 50%, man. So many people are.
You said it was the closest race.
It was 40%, and Kyle Pitts was 39%. It was those two neck and neck.
Garnered most, huh?
Yep. And then everybody else was like, yeah, where DeAndre Swift was a very distant third at 13%. All righty. We've got the waiver wire winner. So which player did you pick up off the waiver wire to make a huge impact for your fantasy roster? Your candidates were Craig Dortch, Jerick McKinnon, Evan Ingram, Justin Watson. And the winner is...
That would be Christian Watson, not Justin Watson.
Yes, Christian Watson. And the winner is Jerick McKinnon on that one. And he ran away with that one there. Could be because Greg Dortch garnered 2% of the vote.
First off, I will die on the Greg Dortch was the hero.
Yes, you got one call right all season. We get it that you're gonna, just die on that hill, and that's okay.
I have planted my flag. I am welcoming all comers.
On the Greg Dortch above all hill, huh? All right, I like it.
It was 1 week of just pure bliss for me.
There you go. Greg Dortch only 2%, but Jerick McKinnon ran away with that one at 57%.
As well he should have.
Yes, and the rookie of the year for fantasy football, your nominees were Kenneth Walker III, Chris Olave, Tyler Algier, and Garrett Wilson. And your winner is, that's right, Kenneth Walker. 43%. Any final thoughts on any of these nominees or any of these awards?
Tell you what, Tyler Algier.
Yeah, and
6% of the vote was it.
Which blows my mind. He was statistically better than Kenneth Walker.
Yeah, and that was
people are so in love with the name value here because they don't watch the Falcons, and I understand why. Like I get it. But if you had Tyler Algier on your roster, especially weeks 10 through 17, 18, you rode him to maybe not quite a championship, like it wasn't.
Rode him to a first round out.
But you rode him to some success down the stretch here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and as a Kenneth Walker owner, I had him in the home league. It was very disappointing. That was tough. And I mean, it put me in such a hole because I drafted him in the 5th or 6th round, right? And it was tough to not have, which was essentially my second draft pick because of decisions that were made previously. But that was tough to not have, my second draft pick available the first 5-6 weeks of the season, 4 or 5 weeks of the season. That was not fun.
Actually, Alex, that could be a how not to draft and how not to run a keeper deal, like a full-on blueprint of pitfalls to avoid on some of those things. Like that could be a full-on segment.
Oh yeah, it was a donation year. It was always a donation year.
Yeah.
It was always a donation year.
If you're going to go all in to win it, you better be damn sure you win it, because when you don't, and that's what you're stuck with the next year.
That was a donation. This was a donation year.
Yes. Makes it a little rough. All righty, guys. Let's go ahead and move on to the coaching carousel. And that's just a fun little graphic. I'm not going to lie. I like it.
Fun.
Yeah. Anyway, all of the guys getting on the carousel, getting off. Heard a story where
Dr. Pepper. There's a shameless plug for all you football fans.
There you go. I heard a story about Cliff Kingsbury deciding to get a one-way ticket to Thailand today, and is not even fielding calls about.
Just said, you know what? We'll deal with it later. I need some time.
But he's still got all that all those years left on the contract, and with coaches' contracts, they are fully guaranteed. And the only way to offset those things is if you get a job somewhere else, right? Yep. And so At that point, he's just sitting on a beach drinking Mai Tais, getting paid by the Cardinals still for his full salary, all the way through 2027, I believe, is when his contract extensions through.
They extend Wilkes, they extend Kingsbury, they extend Murray. 2 of the 3 are out, and the other one's not going to be available till about halfway through the season next year.
And don't forget, you spent a number 10 overall pick on Josh Rosen to only pick Kyler Murray number 1 overall the following year. Like,
that's good. That was good.
Yes.
Look, you think I'm bad at managing a team?
Yeah,
Cardinals.
There's always the Texans and the Cardinals.
Is there is there a red phone located next to your computer that Steve Kimes was calling you on and getting advice there?
My attorney has advised me that I do not need to answer that question.
Oh, okay. I like it. All righty, guys. So lots of positions open right now for head coaches, right? We're not going to really get into some of the coordinators yet. We'll start letting the dust settle on some of these head coaches. But Cardinals, Panthers, Broncos, Texans, Colts, all have head coaching vacancies out there. Any of them that you want to spend any time on?
No, but I do think Sean Payton is the coach of one of these. I was talking to a friend who's a Saints fan about that. It was actually after the news broke that Sean Payton was going to interview with the Broncos. And he was like, well, we're the Saints. We still own his rights, so we're going to have to trade him. Basically, if you want, I'm sure there's ways around it, but a trade is the only way that works. And
they'll get draft compensation back is usually how that works.
Right. And he was like, we take a couple first rounders. I was like, Denver doesn't have any first rounders to give you. You got to talk to Seattle about that.
So I don't know.
Well, even then, right? Like
there's the offset. There's the Sean, and I think that's the debate that these owners are having, right? Or GMs with owners or whatever. Like, does the presence of Sean Payton offset the trading away of a first round pick plus X, right? Is it 2 firsts? Is it a first and a third? Is it a first, a fourth, and a seventh? Like, what really does that look like? And all the different combinations based off of how teams value these draft picks and the point total associated with them. And that's a whole big rabbit hole. But how sure are you that you can forego your first round draft pick and, take this head coach instead? I mean, because for the Broncos, the trade is essentially a three-way trade, right? Broncos trade Bradley Chubb to Miami. Mm-hmm. Miami trades the Niners first round pick to the Saints, and the Saints trade Sean Payton to Denver. Like, that's essentially what this deal is if you back it up, like just on surface level without getting into it. So is Bradley Chubb worth Sean Payton? Yes. Bradley Chubb wasn't healthy enough for the Broncos. That's why they didn't extend him. That's why they, were willing to give him up. So when in context like that, the Broncos weren't going to have a first round pick coming into this offseason until they traded Bradley Chubb. So if all they have to give up is this late round first of the Niners, potentially, 30, 31, 32, right? Wherever that lands for the Niners this season. I don't know. That's kind of, I'm not as sour about that as I think a lot of Broncos fans are when they say first round pick traded. It's a back end of the first round pick that they didn't even have when we started the season. Like, you're basically trading Bradley Chubb for Sean Payton. Like, that's basically what it is when you get down to brass tacks. And I think that's worth it based off of the, the reputation and performance output that we saw between Sean Payton and Drew Brees.
Right.
And I think that that's the only way you're going to get Russ's attention and get Russ to do things that the head coach wants to do. Payton likes to throw the ball. His concepts aren't overly complex. Like, he's done more with Drew Brees and shotgun, right? To work with some of that. Like,
they're similar in size.
Work. Yeah, they're similar enough in size, right? Yeah. Russ is a bit more mobile.
Yep.
Drew Brees probably had a better. Well, I don't know. Russ is
he's
really
more
accurate deep ball thrower. Drew Brees was in short and intermediate, but Russ statistically has a better deep ball than Drew Brees did.
Sure.
Right? Like just that high arcing pass where the tip of the ball drops over and it lands. And I don't know. Hope springs eternal. Russ looks so much better weeks 17 and 18 after they let go of Nathaniel Hackett than he did weeks 1 through 16.
Can I tell you the comparison there is a round of golf, right? The first 16 holes, you're just garbage, and you question why you even spent the money on the clubs and the golf balls and the round. And then on 17, you hit a par. And then on 18, you're flirting with a birdie, and you're like, "Hey, here we go.
Pretty damn good at this. I can do this.
Right? I can do this. Yeah.
That's
see you guys next week."
Right now. Yeah. So I don't know. I think it's interesting. Some of these teams, the first round pick's too rich. Right?
Yeah, like I'd agree.
It makes sense for the Broncos because it's a back end of the first round pick. But if you're the Colts, why would you want to give up a first round pick? Right? The same thing with the Texans. They're definitely not giving up their first round pick for Sean Payton. Like they're looking for some
quarterback
else. Like, and I don't think the Texans is a likely outcome anyway. Like I think it's probably the Broncos or Cardinals is where I think this falls in because they at least have stability at the quarterback position, right? Russ might be deteriorating. It's after this season, it's completely within the realm of possibilities. But Kyler's coming back from the injury. The Panthers don't really know what they're doing at quarterback, right? They've had 5 different starting quarterbacks in the last 2 seasons or something like that, 6 maybe.
Just traded away a generational talent.
And played better without him, though.
Fair.
And the Colts have been looking for a quarterback for years now since Andrew Luck left. So if I'm Peyton, I'm looking at the Denver or Arizona. Like, which team do I think is the easiest turnaround? And I'd tell you it's Denver. The talent that team has on defense and the pieces that they have on offense are easier to connect together than where Arizona is in a crazy situation where they're flirting with trading Nuke Hopkins. Kyler Murray is going to be out the first part of the season. The defense is not very good. They've been hemorrhaging on the backside. So why deal with that when you can step into Denver and go, you know what? Maybe my philosophy, if I can make this work, like I just need a good DC. Like this team has shown they can be competitive in 1-score games, right? So I'm shooting for 20 to 23 points a game. Like that's what I have to do as Sean Payton. I'm like, hell, I can do that.
Right. Yeah. And then who knows, there's maybe a chance that they're able to retain Evero as the defensive coordinator there, to your point there. Right.
I would like that. Like, I don't know if he's going to go for that, but I would like that. Like, I'm also not opposed to if Vic Fangio came back, right? There was rumors that Peyton kind of had his coaching staff kind of handpicked already. Vic Fangio was rumored to be the DC that Sean Payton wanted. I'd be okay with that because the defense was good with Vic, right? He's a bad head coach.
Stupid good.
Yeah, but he's a great defensive mind. Like, I'm okay with that decision. So it's just, who's calling plays? Who's your quarterback coach? Like, who is Russ going to be dealing with day in and day out? Because that was one thing that I think kind of went under the radar was Sean Payton and Drew Brees were close, but it's the quarterback coach who is actually in his ear almost 24/7. Like, so that is a very key component. So Sean Payton, you would think, would have an inside track to who he would want to fill that role and help push his message along to Russ and the offense.
Right. Interesting things too coming out of that Arizona job where they officially hired in a GM. I don't know if you guys saw the statement and the press release that he had there, but seemingly the GM coming in almost seemed like he was taking some shots at the locker room there as an introductory press conference type of thing. So
good. Get everybody on your team.
Exactly. Right. Like nothing says, hey, we're going to turn around an organization that has spent a lot of capital and, underperformed, like calling out the locker room. Anyway, any other thoughts on any of the coaching carousel or any of these other teams?
It'd be fun to see how it plays out.
I hope Steve Wilkes is given the opportunity to run this back with Carolina.
Right.
Like, it's not the splashiest name. It's not the, what makes everybody the warm and fuzzies, but Steve Wilkes did connect with these players. And after trading Christian McCaffrey, remained in playoff contention and at least relevant. Bad division, but at least relevant for until week 17 when they lost to the Buccaneers.
Right.
So heck, maybe you run that back. Maybe you strip down the coordinators and Wilkes can bring in the guys that he wants. But he obviously connected with those players enough that they didn't quit on him. Right. They fought and they clawed and they got outmatched at the end. But an off season and knowing that's your job and not looking over your shoulder, you're fighting for a competent quarterback to try and see what that looks like. And Carolina is they're not close to being world champion ready, but they are close to being a thorn in a lot of people's side and could be kind of like the Jaguars, right? Where they mix it up a little bit and you beat a team that maybe you shouldn't supposed to. And, if you can overachieve slightly, that's not a bad first year. Like Steve Wilkes did that in half a season as the intern coach.
And we've seen it so many times in the past where you see it just last year with the Raiders, right? A guy who the locker room respected that they played hard for, and then they just showed him the door at the end of the season. And it's like, all these, the problem is you get these owners that think they're the smartest people in the world and they, overthink it. And you don't need to overthink it. Get the guy that the team plays hard for and you're going to have a chance. The Lions had a chance. Why is that? Because the team plays hard for Dan Arnold. Like, it's just what it is.
Yeah. Dan Campbell. Dan Arnold's a tight end.
Dan Arnold is the tight end. Dan Campbell is also a tight end.
Yes, that's true. Interestingly enough, right? Like, I'm going to just, funny thought that Jim Caldwell's up in a lot of these deals, a lot of these conversations. And it's funny, right? Like the Lions are rejoicing a 9-8 season under Dan Campbell and fighting back and coming through. Jim Caldwell was shown the door after going 9-7 and being the only Lions head coach in the last 50 years to have a winning record during his tenure as the Lions head coach. And Jim Caldwell has also come out and said that he's only accepting head coaching offers. He will not go be an offensive coordinator for teams. Apparently having lots of folks wanting to try and interview him for that. The Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson also took himself out of the running for several head coaching positions where the Vegas Lions. Yeah.
He said he's coming back.
Right. The Vegas Lions had actually moved where he was the odds-on favorite for like Carolina and another job earlier today. And then just a few hours later, pulled himself out of the race. Jared Mayo also pulling himself out of the races to stay put in New England, and Jim Harbaugh taking himself out of the races to stay at Michigan there as well. So I think that kind of puts a cap on that. Any other thoughts before we move on to the divisional round?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay, awesome. So we're heading over to the divisional round, and our calls for the wild card weekend stood at Alex. You went 3-2-1 against the spread and 3-3 on the over and unders. I went 4-1-1 against the spread at 4-2 on the over and unders. And Kevin, you went 4-1-1 against the spread and 3-3 on the over and unders. And if you had caught some of those things just right, you would have actually swayed that a fair bit there, right? Like I referenced the Jacksonville game, right? Like if we all called it at the 1.5, the one where it was early in the week, but at kickoff it had moved to 2.5. So if you'd gotten that, like, it swayed that one. Same thing with the Cincinnati Baltimore game, right? Like over under was set at like 45, and then at kickoff it had moved down to like 40, like some big line changes on that. And so I bring that up to simply tell you this: when you're looking at the weekend here, make sure that if you're looking at going in early because you like the line, don't wait. Sometimes those things will hurt you there a little bit. And on the flip side, you can always modify those things on a lot of these sites. So let's go ahead and start with our first matchup here. And divisional matchup, we've got the Chiefs. We've got the Jaguars. Chiefs are favored by 9.5. The over-under on this one is 52. What are your thoughts here?
Go ahead, Alex.
I was going to say, I'll start. I like the Chiefs to cover. I think Jacksonville's magic runs out. And I think they get a dose of reality after. Look, they expended a lot of energy coming back in that game, and that's a very high. It is hard to refocus and prepare for a team like the Chiefs after you do that. So I think their magic runs out. I'll take the Chiefs and the points, and I will take the over in this game, mainly because I think the Chiefs probably put up a 40 spot.
I like the Chiefs, but I like the under in this game. I think it's going to be a little bit tougher for the Jacksonville offense to come back in this one. And this Chiefs home crowd is crazy, especially during playoff time. So I like the Chiefs, but I'm taking the under.
So I'll be the odd man out here. I'm going to take the Jaguars on this one. 9.5 just seems like way too much. This feels like a touchdown game to me, right? Like I can see the Chiefs winning this thing, winning it by a touchdown on this one. 9.5. No, thank you. I'll go on the Jaguars on this one. As far as 52, that is a big number to get to, and I think you do see the Jaguars settle down here a little bit. The Chiefs come out there, play their game. This one feels like it's probably going to end up something like 27-20, I think is how this thing scores out. So I'm going to take the under. One of the props that I really liked, I found Patrick Mahomes a passing prop for 320.5 passing yards. I'm going to take the under. I think we see him closer to about 300 yards. 320 seems like a lot.
Go ahead.
Am I on a delay?
Alex, what's your prop?
I'll take Trevor Lawrence over 0.5 interception. My man is going to do it again. Not 4, but at least 1.
Not 4, but at least 1, he says. Sorry, my stinking phone just cleared out on me. I'm getting back in.
Evan Ingram.
That's right. Evan Ingram over,
yards.
46.5 receiving yards.
All righty. I like it. Some good calls there. We'll see how this thing plays out there. Do have a comment coming in. Bill over in the chat. Welcome in, Bill. Happy New Year and God bless you guys. Thanks for tuning in,
Thanks,
Bill. Happy
Bill.
New Year to you as well. Always a pleasure seeing you in the chat there. All righty. Let's go ahead and head on into our next matchup, divisional round here. The Giants, the Eagles. We've got the NFC East very well represented in the playoffs still. Eagles favored by 7.5. The over-under on this one, 47. What are your thoughts here?
I'll take the Eagles to cover the 7.5. Again, I think the Giants, put it all out there to win the last game. They showed their entire deck of cards. They showed their whole hand. I think the Eagles were watching that intently. And will now be prepared for Daniel Jones to run for 70 some odd yards if that is how the Giants choose to attack them. That Eagles defense is stingy. It is difficult. And I think Jalen Hurts coming back to the lineup, even if he's not 100%, gives a little bit of oomph to this Eagles offense. And so I'll take the Eagles to cover the 7.5. And I'm a sucker for points, so I always root for the over. And I think the over will hit on this.
I am aligned with Alex. Jalen Hurts is off the injury report. The Eagles manhandled the Giants earlier on in the season and just kind of toyed with them there in week 18 and jumped out. And the Giants didn't play anybody, but that doesn't really matter. I think we see the same type of thing. I think the Eagles win this game by more than a touchdown. I like the over as well because I do think the Giants are going to be able to put up somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 to 23 points. I just think the Eagles can put up 30 plus and really push this game over. I think they're ready. I think the Eagles fan base is going to play a big part in this playoff game, right? Philly is a raucous crowd. Not that the Giants are unfamiliar with that, but playoff atmospheres are a little bit better. But I think now that Hurts is healthy, had this bye week, the team could, really look to install a good game plan. It's a team that they're familiar with. So it's not like they're looking at foreign concepts or some system that they're not used to planning a scheme around. So Dayball will have his team prepared, but ultimately the Eagles are going to be too much. This team is an offensive juggernaut when Jalen Hurts is healthy.
Hold up. Not so fast, my friends. We're going to go a different route here for my pick. I'm going to take the Giants to cover this thing. I think this one's going to be a 7-point game. It's the hook that calls me off of this thing. I do think that the under comes into play. The Giants have some cornerbacks that have gotten healthy over the last little bit, right? We saw the Giants do a fairly decent job against Justin Jefferson. I think we can see something similar come to play against both A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, kind of holding them in check slightly. They're not going to do it all the way, but they'll hold them in check just slightly to the point where I think this thing's going to be a 24-17 type of game. As far as a prop that I like the under Daniel Jones, 221.5 passing yards.
So, question with you thinking the Giants cover this game. You brought up Justin Jefferson because they did a lot of bracket coverage over Jefferson. Do you expect a similar thought process around A.J. Brown, or are they going to spy Jalen Hurts to keep him from killing them with his legs, because they're not going to be able to do both?
You're right. I think that they're going to see it. You'll actually probably see a couple of it play out in a couple of different phases throughout the game, right? You're not going to see them solely either bracket that, because if you're going to bracket, you almost have to bracket both Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown there, right? And you can't do both at the same time. So I think you'll see some shifting coverages on this one as well. Wink Martindale has been a defensive coordinator for a long time and has been doing this job very well at a high level for a long time. So I think you're going to see the Giants come through with some different looks that the Eagles haven't seen from them before. On this one, you'll see them potentially spy a little bit. You'll see some bracket coverage in there, and I think you'll see a lot of rotation going through to try and throw them off in some different set pieces from the that's a soccer term for you, but so different formations off the get-go from there to see if they can't get some different looks on that one. Jalen Hurts, like I say, he's going to do well. I want to see him, what he actually looks like getting hit. I realize that the report says that he's fully healthy, but I want to see him actually go out there, get hit a little bit on that shoulder and see what happens there, and see how he manages to get through. It is tough to beat a team 3 times a row in a season. We just saw that happen with Buffalo and Miami, where these two teams, like on paper, shouldn't have even been close. Like, there's no reason that we should have expected Miami to be anywhere within the 14-point spread on that one, and they took Buffalo down to the wire on this one. And I don't know that that's going to change here, from the simple standpoint that 3 times in a row, tough to beat. I think we're going to see this one be a defensive slobber knocker more so than anything.
Fair enough. All right. Well, I will jump right into my prop. I have Jalen Hurts going over 235.5. I think the first half is going to be more about his legs as he gets used to this playoff atmosphere, kind of forcing the Giants' hand on defense. And as they focus more in on his legs in the second half, I think Jalen Hurts torches them through the air. 1. We've gone like 6 weeks without having that issue, and your first week back, and here we go.
Yeah, well, some old habits die hard, right?
That's right.
Okay. I was agreeing with you. That's the problem. My computer did not want me to agree with you. I agree with you, Kevin. And I think the issue that the Giants are going to run into, and I almost wonder if, with Hurts coming back, that they might almost dare him to try and run the football, at least early on, and stick with the 2 high safety look, right? And almost see like, all right, you want to run the football, go ahead, run the football, like welcome back to the NFL type deal. So I wouldn't be surprised if Hurts, kind of his brain takes over before his mind. And, initially it's, hey, take the yards that are available. And then, you take one shot and it's like, okay, maybe we need to stay in the pocket a little bit more. And that might play into the Giants' advantage. You never know. But my prop that I'll take is for Daniel Jones to score a touchdown, either, rushing it in. So I'll take a Daniel Jones scores a touchdown prop. It's a plus 210 right now from what I'm seeing. So
not bad.
Yeah.
All righty, let's head on into our next matchup here. We got the Bills and the Bengals. Bills favored by 3.5. Over under on this one, 50. Thoughts on this one?
I will take Cincinnati. I actually think they win outright. I don't know why, but I will take Cincinnati here. Given, especially after what I just said to start the show about their O-line woes and the injuries that they were facing. But it's hard to bet against Joe Burrow in the playoffs all of a sudden, right? Like, it's hard to go against that man. So I'll take Cincinnati to cover the 3.5, but I think they win outright, and I will take the over as well. I think we're going to see two fine quarterbacks go crazy. So
I'm going to take Cincinnati, but I actually found this game at 4.5, which I like even more.
Oh yeah.
But I'm going to take Cincinnati. I agree with Alex. This is scary. I mean, normally we don't agree quite in sync on these. Normally Derek and I are more lockstep with a lot of this, but I'm with you, Alex. I think it's the Bengals, and I'm taking the over. I think Joe Burrow is going to be chucking it all over the yard. I think that the Bills, as good as they've been, they have sputtered and they have looked mortal down the stretch here in the season, right? They have kind of underperformed in comparison to the perception and anticipation of what this team can do. Part of it's losing some guys on defense. They're not quite getting the pass rush the way that they were. You're seeing some leaky play as far as stopping the run game. So I think that overall, on top of it all, right, wrong, or indifferent, I think the Bengals are frustrated with the NFL because of how the coin flip, the neutral site, how all that stuff worked out, right? And again, this isn't not Damar Hamlin's fault. We're glad he's better, but this is the repercussion of the choices that the NFL made in response to that, and it did kind of screw the Bengals, and I think they're frustrated about that. And right, wrong, or indifferent, I think this is going to be a really fun game. But the Bengals are going out to prove a point that they had that home game against Buffalo, and had they won that game, they would have been the 2 seed. This game would be in Cincinnati again. So I do think that there's a bit of an underlined story there, and we'll see as it gets closer if people even bring this up or not, because I know a lot of this Damar Hamlin thing and the fallout's kind of taboo for people to talk about. But these guys are human with real emotions, and it is a personal driver, right? We got screwed. This game got canceled. We were leading, right, wrong, or indifferent. We were winning this game early on, and we didn't even get the shot at having the number 2 seed and being able to play 2 home games in the playoffs. So here we are on the road, and now we're going to prove a point that we should have been treated more fairly than how they perceived the NFL treated them in the fallout of the Damar Hamlin situation.
Right. Yeah, Kevin, you just hit a lot of that, because I was getting ready to come up and say this is a game that I think should be played at a neutral site due to the way that things ended up playing, right? Like, if Buffalo wins this thing and Kansas City wins, we see a neutral site in the AFC Championship game. Fully believe that this game should be played at a neutral site as well, due to the fact that if the Bengals win, you're right, this game's in Cincinnati, not in Buffalo. And, a lot of what you just said, but I do like the Bengals on this one. On the spread, I firmly believe that they're going to win this game outright as well. But this feels like a field goal kind of game. This one's going to come down to the end of it, I do believe. I'm going to take the under on this one, though. 50 is a very high bar to get to, especially out the cold of Buffalo. I think we're going to see this one probably end up more around the like a weird score too, like a 25 to 20, 22 type of matchup. Like, very strange scores how I'm seeing this one come to play. So that's what I'm thinking. As far as a prop goes, I'm taking T. Higgins to go under 66.5 receiving yards.
Very good. I'm taking Joe Mixon over 54.5. I mentioned it earlier when I was kind of breaking this down. The Bills' run defense has been susceptible here lately. I think that not a monster game out of Joe Mixon, but I do think it's enough to keep them honest and allow Joe Burrow to drop back and try and pick apart this defense through the middle of the field.
I will take Stephon Diggs over 79.5 receiving yards.
Funny enough, I almost took, like when I was looking at the doc earlier, I almost took both of the props that you guys went with there. Like, I love both of those guys. I love both of those props. So kudos to you for picking them. All righty. Let's go ahead and head on over to our last matchup of the divisional round. We got the Niners, the Cowboys. Niners favored by 4.5, over under 45.5. Thoughts on this one?
I will take San Francisco minus the 4.5. I think they bludgeon Dallas. I think, again, Dallas is not who we thought they were, or at least not the team that we saw last week. I think we see water find its level, and I think the level is closer to what they were the last 5 or 6 weeks of the season than what they were last week against Tampa Bay. So I'll take San Francisco minus the 4.5, but I will take the under in this one. Oddly enough, I think this is the lowest point total of the weekend, and I've taken the under in this one. But I think it's going to be something like a 23-10 type deal.
So I'm taking Dallas to cover this, and it's not a popular opinion, but I could see Dallas winning this game outright. I think that if I were Mike McCarthy, I would be paying very, very close attention to what the Raiders did when they played the San Francisco 49ers in week 17. That was a high-scoring affair. The Raiders were able to kind of jump on them and do some different things with route combinations to confuse a little bit the secondary. And I think the Cowboys' offensive line is just good enough to give Dak time to do some of that. On the flip side, this Cowboys pass rush, trying to go through all those games that Brock Purdy's played, I do believe that this Cowboys pass rush is probably going to be the most creative and fastest pass rush that he has seen in his young NFL career. And I think that stymies Brock Purdy a little bit. Like, we could see some chinks in the armor here if the pass rush gets home early, speeds up his clock slightly, and that leads to mistakes, right? We see this even with all-pro veteran quarterbacks. So that's at least my game script to how the Cowboys win. But I do think they keep this within 4.5. I don't see any of these games. No, I don't see this game. Maybe I should leave it at that. I don't see this game being a blowout. I think the Cowboys have enough talent, just raw talent, to keep it close. But we are going to have to see a lot out of Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, and Dalton Schultz. It is not going to be so much Zeke Elliott and Tony Pollard.
Yeah, I could see that one. This one here is a great matchup, right? Like, love seeing these two teams in the playoffs, right? It always kind of brings up the nostalgia days of old in the early 90s when watching some of these, watching these two franchises go at each other in the playoffs. But I think you're right. I think the Cowboys managed to keep this thing within about a field goal, right? That's about where this thing feels like. I do think that there's going to be plenty of points put up on this one. Could easily see both of these teams, end up close to 30 when this thing's all said and done. Like, I think this one here actually might be one of the higher scoring games of the week. Like, that's where I see this one coming to 27-30 type of thing. I think the Niners win in advance, but it's going to be close. It's going to come down to the last play, I think, is how this one's going to do. As far as the prop, I've got George Kittle under 51.5 receiving yards.
Alex, why don't you go ahead and share yours here, because this is interesting.
Objection, Your Honor. So I found a line of 50.5 receiving yards for George Kittle, and I will take the over on that. So if George Kittle lands at 51 receiving yards, you both
win. Yes.
I like that. I'm taking Brock Purdy under 236.5. It's not going to be through the air where he's going to be successful, or where this Niner team's really going to be successful. It's going to have to be with Christian McCaffrey, Elijah Mitchell, and this ground game. That's how you nullify the pass rush, is you gash them on the ground. And because of that, they're going to want to get the ball out of Purdy's hands as quickly and as frequently as possible, whether it's through the run game or the short passing game. And I think that limits his yardage upside.
Right, and when these two teams played earlier this season, I believe Deebo Samuel was coming close to double-digit rushing attempts earlier in the season. Now, obviously, that was before the addition of CMC, that kind of stuff. But very interesting that you could see Deebo in the mix there as well in the backfield there, just to keep Dallas on their heels. So, a couple of comments coming in. Terry in the comments saying bang bang 24, Dallas 18. So he's calling for a Niners upset there, or Niners win there, sorry. And saying Dallas curse owns Kittle, bet the under. Terry's right there on the same page as me there, Alex.
Terry, what do you know? You don't know, Terry.
Actually, you should have seen Terry on those Friday shows, man. He was pretty good at some of those calls that he was making.
I'm just kidding with you, Terry.
That's all right. I like it. I like it when Terry chimes in and he's on the same side I am. So yeah, it's just more put a tally mark next to my my thing there, Alex. So all righty. So guys, that is going to be how we see this thing coming out for the divisional round here. We'll of course bring you our wins, our losses, all of that stuff next week when we look towards the championship round. But that being said, you got to call your shot here on who you think the Super Bowl prediction of the matchup and the winner, and we'll see how well we can bring this thing home. So call your shot. Who you got in the championship game or the Super Bowl, and who you think is going to walk away with it all?
I'll let you guys go first because mine I'm very shaky on.
All right, I'm gonna take Philly and Kansas City. I think that the one thing that might bother me is if Cincinnati does win this game against Buffalo that we're all calling, because Joe Burrow is the Patrick Mahomes slayer. And so that worries me a little bit. But I like this Philly team a lot. Jalen Hurts was the MVP all season long until he got dinged up late in the season. And like I said earlier, this team's an offensive juggernaut. They play just well enough defensively. And I think that this would probably be the highest scoring, most entertaining Super Bowl that we could get. So I'm rooting for that. So Philly and Kansas City, and I will tell you, man, I'll tell you Philly wins this game because I don't think Kansas City has enough of a run presence to keep Philadelphia honest.
All righty. Alex, go ahead because I got a lot of stats that I'm going to bring on mine. So go ahead.
Okay. So I full disclosure, which I don't have to have full disclosure because this is our show, damn it. But I originally had put in here San Francisco versus Buffalo, and then I just went on that long diatribe about how Cincinnati's going to beat Buffalo this weekend. So that would not have made very much sense for me to come back and be like, well, it's going to be
it's called hedging your bets, sir.
Yeah. So I changed my mind halfway through, and I'll change it again if I want to, if I start talking myself into something different here. But I have gone with San Francisco and Cincinnati as the Super Bowl. I think the AFC is so much harder to get through than the NFC is at this point that I think they just run out of gas when they get to the big game. Never mind the 2 weeks off, whatever. I just think you expend so much energy getting to the Super Bowl in the AFC with the caliber of teams that you have to beat and play, like you have to play and beat, that I think the NFC has the easier track. So I will say this, we are all in agreement on this. I think the NFC team wins it. And so for me, that's San Francisco this year.
I see where you're going there. I've got
hold on. Can we see Terry's comment, please? Because you said Terry's a smart guy, right?
So Terry seems to think that it's going to be the Niners 34, Cincinnati 28 in the Super Bowl.
Terry knows everything, right? Terry is great.
Terry does pretty well.
Terry does well.
Although I will toot my own horn here for a moment. Last year I called the 23-20 and actually hit that on a couple of different books last year for the final score outcome for the old Super Bowl there. But all right. So looking at this, I've got some numbers for you as to the old Super Bowl matchup here. The number that we're going to start with is 13. 13%. That 13% is the reason that you will not see Buffalo, Kansas City, or Dallas win the Super Bowl on this one. There has not been a team since 2020 that has made that has won the Super Bowl that has 13% of their salary cap hit going towards the quarterback. Each one of those teams is there, right? We've only seen it where 3 times in the last 20 years that a team with a quarterback that has that kind of contract hit has even made it to the Super Bowl. 2 of those happen to be Peyton Manning, by the way. The other one was Matt Ryan. So we all know how some of those ones turned out there with some lopsided Super Bowls and some big losses, big complosions. Is a good way to phrase that one. Anyway, so looking at it, I'm going to go with Philadelphia versus Cincinnati on this one. Kevin said it earlier, right? If Cincinnati gets by Buffalo, you will see, Kansas City and Cincinnati in the AFC Championship game. Joe Burrow has the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes number for whatever reason, and I think that they'll get there through it. I do like that Philly team, though. They are just a well-rounded unit. They really play some very, very good complementary football. They've been good all year long. The only chink that seems to be in their armor is when Jalen Hurts was hurt there. So healthy Jalen Hurts in the Super Bowl, I think they take that thing home. So a couple of comments there from Terry for you. He's got the laughing faces, laughing emojis for you there, Alex. And Terry says that Jaguars are going to beat KC this weekend.
Terry, you were on my team until that last one. I was believing in you.
All righty. So there we go. There's our matchups. There's our predictions. We'll, of course, be waiting and seeing how we're if we need to update any picks there next week when we get through there. But real quick, we're going to kind of end the show on a little debate here. And a hot topic going around out there, the Ravens, Lamar Jackson, they've got the contract dispute there. Lots of there's some players that came out and said that, throw a brace on it, go out and play. Some other players coming out and saying, take care of yourself, make sure that you're fully healthy on that, right? Like Michael Vick was one of the ones saying that he throw a brace on it. He played a season with an MCL, I believe was the tweet on that one. Robert Griffin III saying that he wishes that he'd hadn't just thrown a brace on it and played and actually took care of himself and healed up there. Was another tweet that I saw out there as well. So some interesting things there, some interesting deals at work here. Lamar just coming off of his 5th year rookie deal and set to become a unrestricted free agent should the Ravens not franchise tag him. So that's my question to y'all. What do the Ravens do and what should the Ravens do? What should Lamar Jackson do with this?
Lamar Jackson should hold out for a long-term contract, right? Like, this is the downside. These teams want to get cute with players, right? And they want to maximize the years at the lowest amount of money and then hope that the public turns the player into the enemy when they make the business decision for their livelihood to not go play in a game because there's literally for Lamar Jackson no guarantee for tomorrow. Literally. Right? Like Michael Vick played that season. He was on a 5-year contract when Michael Vick played that season, if I'm not mistaken. I think RG3 had 2 years left on his, but RG3, who I don't always agree with when he's giving some of his hot takes and points, was absolutely right. His knee got banged up worse, and he was never the same player again. Now, part of that was because Mike Shanahan left, and the system also changed. I believe after the injury, but all things, I get it. And yes, these guys get paid a ridiculous amount of money to play a game in a sport that we all enjoy to watch. But at the end of the day, especially in this situation, there's no guarantee. There is absolutely zero incentive for Lamar Jackson to have played that game. So I don't fault him one bit. And if anything, the way that the Ravens sputtered into the playoffs and then got bounced in week 1 shows that not only do they need to invest, whether it's Lamar Jackson or the next quarterback that they're taking, they need to invest in a receiving core around him. So Lamar can sit. I think ultimately he gets franchise tagged. I hope he doesn't sign it. Like they fought with this all last year. Lamar's already sending out cryptic tweets about not appreciating me, and we're making the assumption that it's linked to the Ravens. I hope he gets everything that he wants and then some, because the way that the Baltimore Ravens have handled him is a travesty, because he is a generational talent. It's not the arm that Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen or Joe Burrow have, but he is a transcendent player with an MVP under his belt and zero help around him to show for it. So if the Ravens don't want to pay him, I bet there's a bunch of other NFL teams that will go. Carolina. I think Carolina would sell the farm if they could get a hold of Lamar Jackson right now, and then just find a way to make it work with DJ Moore and company. So I hope he holds out. I want him to hold out. The Ravens will try to franchise tag him, because there is no way they get a deal done. Lamar wants a fully guaranteed deal, much like Deshaun Watson got. There is no chance in hell that the Ravens are going to want to give him that. So they will tag him. And I hope Lamar sits, and I hope they feel the pain of not having a franchise quarterback, and they can go back into the well and risk the Jamarcus Russell, the Josh Rosens, all these quarterbacks who we think should be okay, but then don't pan out, because the Ravens, even with Tyler Huntley, would be good enough that they would not get a top 5 pick to truly get a transcendent quarterback. They'd be picking in the middle of the draft. So you do you, Lamar. More power to you, buddy. I can't even fathom the decision that you have to make when you're talking about that much, generational, life-changing financial decisions, right? And I didn't word that very well, but you guys know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You do what you need to do. And I'm not going to fault you for this one bit. I blame the Ravens for this one, not Lamar.
Yeah, I think the Ravens. So ultimately, I think he ends up with the Ravens. I think that's the next team that he plays for. The next snaps that he takes is with Baltimore. And Kevin, I could not agree with you more. I am so pro player on all of this that, like, I understand when players. I do not fault players for not playing, because they have the ability with a very, very small window in terms of their overall life, right? A very small window to make generational wealth. And it's not just it's multi-generational wealth. It is a chance to set up your grandkids for life, right? And to make sure that, your family never has to worry about money ever again. And so I will never fault a player for holding out. The market changed when the Browns gave a fully guaranteed contract to Deshaun Watson. The market changed with that. And this is a market-driven league, right? You are compared against your peers. You are X signs a contract. The next one is bigger, right? Like that's just how this league works. It is a market-driven league, and the market right now is good for quarterbacks, and it's really good for good quarterbacks. So I think that Lamar Jackson, while ultimately I think that he and the Ravens come to an agreement, because I think the Ravens will see what else is out there, and what else is out there is not as good as what you already have in-house, which technically right now they don't have anything in-house. I guess the league year resets, so they still have, it doesn't reset for a while, so they still have some time if they want to make a deal to make a trade. It's hard to watch Lamar Jackson get away for nothing on the free agency market. I do think that they probably do tag him, but I do think ultimately Lamar Jackson stays in Baltimore, because I just think it would be so silly for Baltimore to let him walk. I understand that we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars here. But hundreds of millions of dollars is nothing to a billionaire owner, a multi-billionaire owner at that, who will get that return and then some through 6 more years of Lamar Jackson when it comes to butts and seats and jersey sales and concessions, and hell, you might even get a new stadium out of the deal. Like it is such an easy return on investment for a player like Lamar Jackson, who has already become the face of your franchise, and has made you competitive in a very competitive division, in a very solid division that you have to keep up with the Joneses in, because otherwise you'll get left behind. You're talking about teams, the Bengals, the Steelers, who are the epitome of stability. It would be silly to try and think that, your way is better than, what has been proven to already work in your own division, so that you can save a couple bucks.
So you guys make some very good points there. I think the Baltimore will franchise tag him. Whether he signs, it's a different story, whether they go through all of that. However, there's a lot of things to come to play, right? And we keep talking about the fact of the market got set by Deshaun. The market got set by whoever. Where's the market at for Daniel Jones? Like that's a legitimate question out there. Where's the market at for Daniel Jones? This is a guy that the Giants decided not to pick up their 5th-year option, essentially making him on a contract year so that they could see where he's at there. Now, does he come back to the Giants? Does he not? That's a whole different thing there. But Daniel Jones had a statistically better season than Lamar Jackson did this past year. And I get that Lamar Jackson has an MVP. This is a what have you done for me lately league, and that MVP was 3+ years ago at this point. And when you look at his passing touchdowns, he had 17 this year, 16 last year. In his MVP season, he had 36. So you take 2 seasons combined, still not getting you the single output for his one MVP season. He's missed 11 games over the last 2 seasons as well. Like there's a lot to be said for all of this thing that, the best ability sometimes is availability. And the Ravens didn't make the playoffs last year, right? Because Lamar got hurt and couldn't be out there to get their team to a victory, to do it. And we were watching that throughout the end of that because, Cincinnati ends up coming from behind him, the dark horse in the division, all of that stuff. And that was Baltimore's division to kind of lose there for a lot of that deal. Same thing with this year. It was Baltimore's division to lose for a lot of it. Lamar goes out, they lose. I get it. All of that has some things that, they don't have the backup in place to be able to win on that one. But Lamar's playing style tends to lead to him getting banged up more so than not. Right. And we see that with very mobile quarterbacks, run first quarterbacks, all of those things. Right. So there's a lot of things there. They've got to invest in a backup quarterback because if he gets banged up and he gets hurt, they've got to have that one ready to go. Right. I already mentioned the 13% of a salary cap there. You're going to have a hard time going out there and putting a very competitive roster together for the type of money Lamar's talking about and wanting to do on this one. And so if you're looking to try and be competitive, right, you mentioned that they need to bring in wide receiver help for him. Lamar, we saw it all season long, a receiver streaking down the field, nobody within 15 yards of him, and he airmails the throw. He couldn't hit a deep ball throw throughout the many different points of the season, has some accuracy issues. And again, Daniel Jones had a statistically better season, both from a passing yards perspective and a rushing perspective out there as well. So that's kind of the question for me is where's the market at for Daniel Jones? And there's not a ton of teams out there clamoring for him. And I get Lamar. There's some locker room pieces. There's some intangible pieces, all of that to it as well. But there's a lot of other things at play here that I don't know that Lamar's going to get the contract that he wants.
I guess I'm not saying that he's worth a quarter $2 billion. I'm simply saying the way he's been treated by Baltimore tells me he should hold out. In all reality, the best way for him to see what his value is within the league, since he really can't talk to anybody, is the best case scenario for him would be for the Ravens to tender Lamar Jackson, put a first round tender on Lamar Jackson, and see if a team is willing to give up their first round pick for a guy that they then have to turn around and sign. Because if a team is, we'll see, obviously those conversations will be had. They'll be able to converse once that tender is set, right? You can kind of say, hey, what are you looking for? And justify if that's right for your organization. But what was it? They were wanting Lamar to take something like $176 million or something like that. And of that $176 million, they only wanted to guarantee like $100 million of it. That's below market value, right? Like, and that's really what it is. Is Daniel Jones worth more to a franchise than Lamar Jackson? Back to your other point.
I don't know that he is. I'm just saying that
I think that this 1 year, right? Like, and the Giants are going to have to come up with their own answer for Daniel Jones, right? Like, the Giants are going to have to figure out if that's what they want to do. I think that because the NFL is a quarterback-starved league, and if you don't have your guy, you are searching for him. And teams like New Orleans, teams like Carolina, what I think will be Tampa Bay, the Indianapolis Colts, possibly the New York Jets, the Baltimore Ravens, because no one's under contract, the New York Giants, because no one's going to be under contract, right? All these teams are searching for their answer. Geno Smith, right? The Seattle Seahawks. Geno Smith isn't under contract next year,
right,
with Seattle. So Seattle's in this bucket. There's tons of teams, right? So if you're Baltimore, are you really, really willing to gamble on this? Because one of those teams will pick Lamar up, and they will pay him maybe not Deshaun Watson type money, but maybe he does end up getting $220 million over 5 years. Maybe they are willing to do that. Maybe it's $198 million over 4 years, right? Something that's comparable, but you shorten the years a little bit. Like, then you start getting into semantics. But all I'm saying is the Ravens are in a terrible position because they do have to do this. Like, they really do have to do this. Otherwise, you go back into the well. And John Harbaugh, as great as a coach that he is, I do not think that he has the adequate skill set to develop a young quarterback. They got lucky with Lamar and having kind of the offensive philosophy that they did that built into that, because anybody else, you take a pocket presence quarterback and stick him on that team. Hell, even if it's Daniel Jones, because I think he does throw the ball better than Lamar most of the time. And the numbers this year, yes, showed that. So
I think he has a better deep ball as well.
Yeah. So you stick a pocket quarterback on the Baltimore Ravens, and outside of like elite play, there's no weapons there. You're not going to be able to do anything.
Right.
So I think they pinned themselves into a corner. And could they be comparable deals? Yeah, they could be comparable deals. Daniel Jones played well when he needed to play well on a contract year to try and bring him back. Same thing with Saquon, right? The Giants declined Saquon's fifth-year option too. Right. And now they have decisions to make because Saquon had a really good season. We missed on that one, right? That was one of the guys that we missed on where he outperformed his draft stock, and we did not see that happening.
Right.
So they're going to have to make decisions, but I don't think that the Ravens are going to like their options without Lamar. So you got to pay him, and you got to pay him what fair market value is. And that tells you it is somewhere in the neighborhood of $200 to $250 million for 4, 5, or 6 years, depending on how you get that kind of played out.
Right.
And that is what it is.
Right. And that's the thing too, because looking forward to their cap space, they've only got about 35 million before they hit their cap space for this season there as well, which I get. They'll do some funny money and all of that and magically make the cap work for themselves. But you're right. Like I think he should do what he needs to do and what's best for him. But at the same time too, right? Like if you're looking at it from a organization perspective, it's tough to necessarily put up a guaranteed contract with a guy that's been missing time, and you have lots of other holes around that deal, because outside of Mark Andrews, they don't really have any receiving options on that. And we saw this year that Mark Andrews needs a receiver on the outside to get him open underneath and for those short and intermediate routes.
Yeah, when Bateman went down and out for sure, right? Like
Right.
Andrews went.
Right. So, Alex, any other thoughts on that one?
Nah, but I think we're in the ballpark. I think we're talking between 41 to 45 mil a year, whether or not that's through your signing bonus or your roster bonus or however you do it. But it's 41 to 45.
And it's not as crippling as that. It sounds crippling, right? But it's not.
Right.
With these new TV deals and salary cap, and the cap will go up into next season. I haven't heard estimated figures yet, but it will go up. So it's not insurmountable, and right? It's not the worst thing in the world, and it does provide a little bit of security to a position that is absolutely necessary to be successful in the NFL.
Yeah, it's a necessary evil for these teams to have to pay a good quarterback. I think they figure it out. The wild card here is Lamar is serving as his own agent, and so that's going to be that's a wild card. You do not have to have the back and forth discussion, and I think there's something to be said about having those negotiations face to face with the owner instead of through your agent with the owner. And I mean, that could be a thing where, the owner says, look, this is what we have to do. This is what we can put up. And just even as simple as the wrong thing gets said, business deals have fallen through on less than that. And when it comes down to it's a business deal, but these are people making business deals. And if you're not, that person doesn't work, or a person gets rubbed the wrong way, if you will, that could be just disaster. So I think it ends up, I want it to end up where he stays with the Ravens, just because Lord knows there are teams in our division, to bring this back to the Broncos. There are teams in our division that need a quarterback, and good golly, if he ends up in our division, that would not be fun.
Very true. All right. And Terry did put the comment in there saying Lamar gets traded to Chicago for draft picks and Justin Fields. You're muted. That's 2.
I did not say anything that time. That was me.
I was just saying that's a spicy take, right?
That is.
I don't personally subscribe to that, but there's nothing wrong calling your shot.
Right. I mean, shoot for that 101.
Everything's on the table, right?
Right. But for the 101, like realistically, the 101, you should be able to get 3 to 4 future first round picks out of that thing from a team trading up on that one. So, especially this year in this draft class, there's a lot of talent coming into this draft class. So,
yeah,
I think if you're the Bears, you hang on to Justin Fields and you trade the 101 away and get 4 first rounders back, 3 or 4 first rounders back for that one, and build around the young man. So
the Bears need to be careful. They're in dangerous situation to pay the penalty for not spending enough cap space.
Yes. So that's
what
okay.
A time to be alive.
They can go.
Yeah, they're gonna have to overpay for someone just so that way they can kind of get their ass out of hot water there.
Christian Kirk on line 1.
Right. But hey, it's worked out. I mean,
right.
They got Calvin Ridley coming into the fold next year, and
Yeah.
Kirk's helped lead them to a wild card victory.
Hey, power to the player, man.
Yeah, good for them.
Yeah, they'll bring in Evan Ingram, and he's a free agent now. They'll watch him get overpaid.
Him.
Yeah, I do too. I'm just thinking of names out there that are free agents that will not see a franchise tag and get some dollars coming their way. So
silly amount thrown at them.
Yes. Yes. Alrighty, guys. Well, I do believe that takes us down here to the end of it. Any final thoughts out there for the viewers and listeners?
Enjoy divisional round weekend. So thank you for tuning in. Please like, subscribe to support this independent podcast. You can find us on all of our socials at Good Old Boys FF. And yeah, enjoy it. There be some fun props, especially as the lines continue to move. Like there's some good numbers out there if you're looking for them now. And if you're looking for them the other way, stay tuned because these things are moving pretty regularly here at the first two middle part of the week before they kind of settle in right before kickoff.
I didn't get a chance to do it, and I don't want to send him off on a tangent here, but I do have to give props to Kevin. Your dogs.
Go dogs.
I haven't talked to him since that game, so your dogs were dogs.
Yeah.
That was a bummer after two really, really good semifinal games. That was a bummer of a championship game for football fans that weren't wearing red and black.
Yeah, but on the flip side, though, you got two championship level semifinal games, right?
Absolutely.
And Derek and I did talk about that briefly in our opening, both weeks, really, leading up to the championship game, and then
This is great.
The Tuesday after. You got two championship level semifinal games. Like it's really hard to get all three games to be exactly what everyone wants, and it just didn't shake out like that. We thought it might.
Hammer
6
down.
minutes into the game, right? At 10-7, you thought, all right, there might be a chance here. Like TCU's waking up, and
nope.
it was game on. Like you could tell.
Down.
That Georgia team was on an absolute mission. And the propaganda that Kirby Smart, God love him, was spewing into that team, they soaked it up and they ate every ounce of bullshit he fed them. And they took it all out on TCU.
yeah, they did. Poor team. It wouldn't have mattered. They could have gone up against any team in the country. Team in the country. Yeah. And I hate to say this, but could Alabama beat an NFL team? Man, there would have been some NFL teams that might have struggled against that Georgia team on that Monday night.
Right? It's just
there might have been some really good teams that would not have done well.
So it was a good performance. I'm still soaking it in.
You should,
because you just don't know when it comes around again, right? It was 40 years in between titles. It could be 80 years in between the next set. So yeah, it was ugly. It wasn't as entertaining as the country wanted, unless you were a Georgia fan. But nevertheless, I'm soaking it all in, and I'm enjoying every single freaking moment of it because, much like Lamar, there's no guarantees. Like the guarantee is they went back to back. They're the first team to go back to back in the college football playoff era, and in dominating fashion, they won a championship. So I'm going to sit on that probably until September when next season starts, and then we're going to start talking three-peat.
As well you should.
All righty, I love it. That's going to do it for us. He's Kevin. He's Alex. I'm Derek. Have a good one. Y'all be safe. Toodaloos.